Mom's recipes and obviously grandma's recipes, they say, are always the best. Welcome once more to Crunchware's Kitchen, dearest friends and family. And if this is your first time stopping by, I would like to say a very warm welcome to you. Today I'm sharing with you yet another crowd-pleasing okra stew recipe. But today we are going mama's way. So I'm going to do it just like I was brought up to make my okra stew. And this is very, very delicious. I come from a family of food sellers. And my auntie somewhere in Obuasi makes this every morning. 7 days a week she sells this. So you should know this is good. Come along with me and let's do some cooking. So here are the ingredients you are going to need. And as always, I'll also list everything for you in the description box. Freshest of ingredients, of course. Yes, we can't have our okra stew without our crab. I even have some Kako here, my onions. I have some mackerel cut up and cleaned and cut up already. I have my wele, that is the cow skin. I have some oxtail. I have some cow foot in the back here, a little bit partially boiled. I have some tripe, my okra, my palm oil. And before I do anything else, I'm going to soak my stockfish first before we do anything else. I think Nigerians call this stockfish. We Ghanaians, it's just alata kako. So, yeah, alata for kako. I've used up all my Gabon Kako, that is the kind that we know from Ghana, so I'm just going to make do with this one that I can easily find in the African market. It is very good. I like it. I like the texture of that as well. But yeah, so let's proceed. I have here my oxtail. I've added my pre-cooked cow foot. You know, it takes forever to cook, so I parboiled it, so it's a little bit halfway done. I've added my cow skin and my tripe to that. The tripe is straight from my butcher, so you see it's not as bleached as most people would do. That is how I like it to taste just like home. I have also put my cut up fish in another saucepan, and I'm going to be adding my crab to it. And the crab, I'm just cutting them into halves, and then I try to wash the inside, get everything else out, the guts and everything. It's already trimmed. I always remove what I call the nails, you know, the tips of the claws and everything. And that is pretty much done. And now I'm going to get ready to get my onion and ginger blended. And this is going to go on my fish and the meat. Before we forget, let's season our meat first. So I have put some salt on my crab and fish. I'm going to put some here on the meats as well, my assorted meats. Yes, assorted, emphasis on assorted, okay? Okra stew has to be lit. And now I'm just spreading my blended aromatics. That's just my ginger anyway, and onion onto my meat. I just divided it, rinsed out the blender for the meat. And I'm just going to stir it up. Just make sure it is all over everything. And then we'll bring this to a boil. So I put about a cup of water on my meat in total from rinsing my blender, and that should be enough to boil it through. And I put about a third cup of water here on my seafood as well, and that is going to boil as well. So whilst these cook, I'm going to start prepping my vegetables. I have put my one pepper in here. I'm just going to make the stew with one pepper. Just call me the one pepper lady, okay? These kids, yes, pretty much most of my meals is just one pepper. I'm like, if I could do half, I would do half. That's a monya santifoba. Anyway, so I put half of my white onion here in the blender, and the other half I have diced it, and that is what I'm going to start my stew with, to fry in the oil. And the red onion, I'm just cutting into bigger pieces, you know, and that is going to go into the stew when everything is done. This is what is going to give it that pop of color, you know, texture and everything. I love fresh onions in my okra, so it goes in the very last, and then we're done. I'm going to cut up my tomatoes, just 4 large tomatoes. I'm not de-seeding them, and they're going to go in the blender as well. So this is why I say I'm really cooking it my mom's way or the family way, as my grandmother used to sell this, my aunties sell this, my uncle makes banku on Sundays to sell Beman quite special. So this is how it's made in my family. I think most people in my part of the country where I come from do it this way. We put garden eggs in our okra stew. So I call it chunky okra stew because it has a lot of chunks, the garden eggs. So I'm just cutting it up into cubes, or I'm dicing it, and this is gonna go in my okra soup just like mama would make it. Thank God I had these in my garden. So I just picked these white eggplants, not the typical garden eggs from Ghana, but it works just as well. So I'm going to soak it in water. That way it is going to help it not to discolor. If you saw the first ones that I cut up and let it sit for a while had already started oxidizing. It was changing color. So in the water, it helps to prevent that. And also the water will help pull most of the seeds out because these have a lot of seeds. The ones from Ghana, you really don't have to worry. And I'm just trying to do some things here, showing you how you will do it. The typical efie abaya, no chopping board. But hey, yeah. Anyway, so my okra is here now. I am just trimming the ends and then I cut it up. So I like to cut the okra in this country this way in just little circles. But I'm showing you how we would do it back home. Yes. For some reason, I feel like the ones here are so soft anyway. They easily fall apart. They break up so quick when you boil it. So I don't go to the trouble of making it into cubes or dicing them. I just cut them in the circles. So I'm going to transfer it into my pot and repeat this process until everything is done. And yes, please feel free to use frozen if that is what you prefer to use or readily available to you. I just like to use the fresh when I can find it. So now that all our vegetables are prepped, I'll go ahead and blend my tomatoes.
Delicious. Delicious.
So our seafood has cooked for about 20 minutes. And I'm checking on it now. It smells so good. It is pretty much all done. I'm just trying to stir it up a little bit just to make sure that the liquids travel to every part of it, to the surface. So the crab and the fish on top gets seasoned as well. Oh, it's seasoned already, but just tastes good. And instead of trying to stir and tearing everything apart, I'm just going to swirl it just like I did. That's how you will make your fancy also. Make sure you don't tear up your fish. And I'm going to let it cook for about 2 more minutes. And it's been that 2 minutes already. Yes, it is perfectly done now. And I'm bringing it off so we can start making our stew. So I have another pot here, a bigger pot, of course, because we're going to make a big pot of okra stew. I'm going to add in here some palm oil. I'll say about 3/4 cup to a cup of palm oil. It's going to be a lot of okra stew, so it's not going to be that much when it's done. And once this heats up, I'm going to add my onions to it. So I have here my half diced onion in here, and I'm just going to fry this in the onion before we put anything else in it. That is, of course, going to make it fragrant.
Can you smell the aroma? Yeah. From Kwachiwa's kitchen. Yeah.
So whilst my onion fries, I'm going to focus on my stockfish. This has soaked for about 50 minutes. Remember, I soaked this right at the beginning. So it is a little bit softer. It comes very, very dry, like bone dry. So normally when you want to cook anything with it, you have to soak it ahead of time. Otherwise, no matter how long, typically whatever you make, even if you make palm nut soup, it's not going to be soft enough. But the longer it stays in water, of course, or anything liquid, it's going to just soften up and swell up as well. So I'm trying to cut it up into pieces as tiny as I can get it. This part in my hand right now is thicker, so it's not going to be easy to cut it up. But the tinier the pieces I cut up, of course, is going to help infuse more into my stew. So this is good now, and I'm back to my frying onions. I'm going to be adding my blended pepper and tomatoes very soon at this point.
Delicious, yeah, delicious, da da da, delicious, delicious, da da, delicious, yeah, delicious. Can you smell the aroma? Yeah, from Kwachiwa's kitchen. delicious, yeah, yeah. Delicious, da da. Delicious, yeah, yeah. Delicious, da da da. Delicious, delicious, da da. Delicious, yeah, yeah, yeah. Delicious.
So this is just about beginning to boil, and I remembered I didn't put my stockfish in there. Remember, it is very dry, so you want to put it in as early as possible. Plus, of course, it has that Kako momone kind of vibe, you know. So once it goes in here and starts cooking in the beginning, it's going to infuse all the aromas here, and it's going to smell just amazing. So I've put them here now, and I'm going to let it cook with the tomatoes all the way down. So my meats have been boiling for about 50 minutes, pretty much an hour at this point. Look at that, perfectly cooked. And so I'm going to take it off the heat so I can start cooking my okra as well.
Delicious.
So to my okra, I'm adding about 1.5 cups of water. I'm going to cover this and bring to a boil. Checking on my tomatoes, you can see it has cooked down quite a bit. It is thickening up, and I'm going to be adding some shrimp powder here. I will not be using any stock cube, just this. When you cook crab, okay, the crab has a lot of flavor, just that umami that you would get if you put anything else like the shrimp cube or anything. It is sweet, slight sweetness, of course, not extremely sweet, so you don't really need stock cube if you can help it. And so the shrimp is going to do a lot of that, plus the crab, like I said. And I almost forgot to add some baking soda or bicarbonate of soda to my okra, but it's not too late. It hasn't even started to boil yet. So I'm going to be adding about 1 teaspoon of that in here. And this is going to help bring the draw, make it slimy, and of course it's going to help bring a lot of color, like it's going to make it greener. So a little bit of bicarbonate of soda on your green vegetables, especially on my string beans or green beans, I would always put a little bit just to make it look brighter and more beautiful. So that is it. I'm just stirring it up so it is well mixed up here, and I'll cover it to boil. Remember, you are cooking okra. Don't just cover it and not be paying attention, because once it boils, it might just boil over and make a mess. So our eggplant has soaked this whole time as well, and I'm bringing it out of the water. As you can see, the color has really changed. It is like brownish because of the oxidization that started with the first batch that I cut up. The seeds, as much as could be removed from it, is in the bottom of the bowl, and I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this in my garden. Hopefully I get another white eggplant, because I can't find this plant anywhere to buy anymore. A lot of people ask me, I bought the plant from Walmart, but last year there wasn't any. So typically mama would boil this on the side. The garden eggs, my aunties, everybody, we would boil this on the side in a separate pot. But I thought if I just put it here, whilst the stew has a little bit of moisture in here, it is still gonna cook up perfectly. And you know, eggplants, they cook very fast. So that's what I've done now, and it turned out good, as you will see for yourself very soon. Checking on my okra, it is starting to boil. Look at this, just beautiful. It is not as soft as I would want it, so I'm just going to stir it up a little bit. Cover it again and let it cook for about an extra 2 minutes, and then I will turn off the heat on that. So my stew is doing amazing, smelling so good. Eggplant has softened up already. I'm just going to add in my meats. So I'm just going to pour everything in here, all the stock, because yes, it's going to be a big part of stew, like I said, and I want all that stock in here. That's why I cooked my okra to be thick, and that way it's going to be perfect when everything comes together. So just stir it all up and just let everything marry. Have a beautiful, perfect marriage in here. The stew is picking all the juices from the meat. The meat is soaking up the stew. So everything is just giving off, you know, it's a give and take relationship right here. And it's going to be perfect. So I'm going to add my crab here with the meat and leave out the fish, because I don't want it to go in here and with stirring it, it's going to all just fall apart. It's pretty well cooked already, so it's going to go in at the very end. So the crab has its own juices as well. Crab tastes so good. So together with the shrimp powder, that is all that is going to bring all the flavor to the stew. So I wanted to go in here, give off what it has to give, and of course soak up some of the stew, so when you bite into that crab, it's just very juicy. Yes. So I'm stirring everything up now, and I will let it simmer down for a little bit.
Delicious. 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 Can you smell the aroma?
One more check on our okra and how timely that was about to just boil over. And so I'm just stirring it to get the bubbles and the slime, everything to settle down so it doesn't go all the way over. And I'm turning off the flame at this point because it is all cooked. I'm going to let it sit for a while because I want the stew to cook a little longer with the meat and crab in there before I introduce the okra. So I let it cook for about an extra 10 minutes, and 10 minutes later, the okra is here. It's changed a little bit of color on the surface, but trust me, it's still perfect. And I'm just stirring my meats. Yes, fully loaded. So if you've been paying attention, you would notice that this is very different from all other okra stews that I've prepared here, not just with the eggplant, but the fact that I boiled my okra before I introduced it to my stew, to the tomato base. I normally just cut up the okra and put it here because I feel like the ones here are softer anyway, and it's just so long of a process the way I was taught. But yes, you can see for yourself the result. The draw is very much there with this one, and everything is cooked separately, so the flavors are layered aside before you put it in. Like you cook your fish separate, the meat separate, even the garden egg or eggplant would have been cooked separate. And I said all that in my first video, and I'm like, Mama goes the long hard way, but I go the lazy way. But I'm just trying to give you a very authentic okra stew recipe, just like it was handed down from my grandmother to my mom and her siblings, probably from their great-great-grandmother as well. Yes, we come from a family of choba owners. Okay, my auntie Davi, she's a pure 100% Akan, half Adanse and half Fanti, but she earned the name Davi because she's been cooking banku and okra stew, granite soup, kokonte, all those for over 20 years. I would say probably 25 years. She started it long ago, and she has earned that name, not for anything, but because, yes, it is that good. So Davi for an Asante woman. Well, this is good, and I really hope you are able to try this. Definitely don't leave out the stock from the seafood. It's just a little bit, but it goes a long way. I'm going to add some fresh peppers here for a little bit of heat. For us, the grown-ups, we can just squish these into our food. And of course, it's going to bring a pop of color to the stew as well. I am going to let that sit for a while. So it cooked in here for about 2 minutes. And that way the peppers just soften up a little bit. And now I've added in here my onions that I have separated. So this is red onions for a reason, because I want that color. You can use white onions, but definitely use red if you can find it, just so you have beautiful colors. Wow, look at this, look at this, look at that. Perfect. This is so good. You will love it. I just tasted for salt, perfectly salted, because all the meats are very well seasoned. So no extra salt needed here. All the stock is in here, and this is just amazing. Time to go set the table. This happens to be one of the meals my kids will eat with no fuss, especially my daughter. She's the picky eater, and this they just love, especially when it's loaded like this with their enam. Yes, you just make their day, and I make my own day, because then there's no fuss, no trouble. Everybody eats and we call it a day. Well, let me just bring Mr. Two Fingers here. Yes, Mr. Crab, there you go. And that is it, served with our banku, very hot banku in here. Perfection. I really hope you are able to try this. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and share this video, and please give me that thumbs up. And until I come your way next time with something delicious, be loving, be kind, be happy.